Good afternoon, everybody, or actually it could be good morning or evening, depending on your time zone. I know we have people from actually across the globe. Thank you for joining us for flexing your blended learning muscles. So I'm Dan Bartel from O'Donnell Learn. Many of you already know of O'Donnell Learn, but for those of you who don't, we're a learning design agency who enables and supports higher education institutions, well, and other institutions who serve adult learners to design and deliver and teach effective and engaging experiences. We have worked with thousands of individual instructors and hundreds of organizations who are committed to transforming the way that learning happens. So today's events, it is one of a series that happens every 2 weeks. Some of you have joined us for every event. These are all focused on knowledge and skills that can be borrowed and implemented right now. It's a practical learning opportunity where attendees can share and learn from each other in a guided format. So new learning infrastructures, they will be about more than just buildings or even LMS platforms and tools. They must be about people. We're moving to a post-modality world, a mix of physical and digital spaces. And that has to start with connecting learners or participants in a webinar for that matter. Let's model that today. You'll notice the chat button on the bottom of the screen. Please introduce yourself in chat and then use the chat throughout the session to share comments. You can also ask questions to the panel or to the group. So, right now, introduce yourself in chat and we can get going. There's also an option to turn on live transcription in your Zoom control bar. Please use that if you wish. We will also use a couple of tools, Padlet and Answer Garden, to focus our shared exploration and learning, and the host will explain those. And our host today, Brett Christie, he is our Director of Learning Design. Brett ensures we do not forget learning is about people, the learners and instructors engaged in the experience and elements that serve desired outcomes. Brett's got over 25 years of extensive experience leading, teaching and learning initiatives, among many other things. He's an expert in applying universal design for learning as a means for greater equity, accessibility, and inclusivity. Last thing I'll say about Brett, as a first-generation college student, he's particularly invested in ways to close equity gaps that exist still in post-secondary education. Brett's going to be joined by Kathy Fernandez, Director of Teaching Technologies for California State University at Chico. So I'm pleased to turn this over to Brett, who can complete his introduction and give a proper introduction to Kathy. Take it away, Brett.
All right, I need screen share capability, please.
And Molly, can you provide that?
You should be all
Awesome. Set. I've got it. I guess I could have at least talked about myself without having the screen up, but let's go ahead and dive in here. So yeah, just really briefly about myself, and Dan made some good points. I mean, I really connect to things like universal design for learning, equity and inclusion, the greatest number and diversity of students succeeding. That's what it's all about to me. Yeah, and I won't say much more other than thrilled in coming to O'Donnell Learn last year and having those types of things fully embraced, and this purposeful learning framework that we'll talk about as part of our session today. But mostly in talking about this new reality we've been adapting to, and where things are going to land, fall 2021 and forward. What are things going to look like? What are some of your realities presently, and as you're strategizing for fall, and then how can we share with each other and learn a little bit through that experience? So let's get digital. I don't know if some of you've seen that term, not trending too strongly, but it's out there. So we want to, Dan covered this. I think we'll just kind of look at this and move on, but and I covered some of this just a moment ago. We want to focus on challenges and opportunities because we've been put through incredible challenges over the last year, but you know what? It's created, I think, some aha moments, and I think it's accelerated some things that are setting up as opportunities long-term as well that we need to think about. And many of you, I'm sure are. You're all smart in doing that. So leading and adapting effectively, and then some models and resources. And I'll introduce Kathy a little bit further in just a bit as we go into her segment, and then we'll hear about the Chico State story and what they've done. And there's some really interesting things there. And her leadership has been really strong in this area. And I invite others all the way along this session. And certainly as we get into that segment, please share out your experiences and resources as well. So let's do a little warm-up exercise. And I have to say, with the subtitle of Get Phygital, I could not resist. I actually came across this recently, and so Mr. Phygital 99 there. Won't go into that much more. I'll say it's a laser tag experience that my friend forced me through. So let's move on. All right, let's have you think about 2021, looking at fall 2021, and what words come to mind. So let me put that, we've got in the chat already. Let's jump to Answer Garden, which I imagine most of you by this point are familiar with Answer Garden. But all you have to do is just type in your response. You've got up to 20 characters per response, but you can do as many responses as you like. So what words come to mind for fall 2021? Okay, so in person, back on campus. That's going to be the case for some places, or for many places, yes and no, or maybe. I'll keep refreshing here. Let's keep loading it up. Ah, blended. Boom, jumping out to the front there. Flexibility, flexible environment, love that. High flex. We'll break some of those terms down. We'll definitely be talking modalities. We've got a wide range of them. More uncertainty to come. Yeah. Overload. Yeah, we still have workload overload, burnout, those types of issues carrying forward with us. They're very real, very present. So we have to be mindful of that. High flex jumped out to the front. It's blended, okay. More first times. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe in the chat, there could be clarification, more first times. More people are doing the first time of a new modality or new type of experience. Some normalcy, maybe, yeah. Well, I think we'll get a semblance of normal again, but with a new reality layered on top of that. Just my sense. We aren't going, yeah. Okay, so that now normal, or new normal as some people will phrase it. Gotcha. Okay, so let's jump off of that. If you haven't used Answer Garden before by any means, then it's extremely easy to do and free. And I'll just pop the general link into the chat there and we'll move on. So we love using that just as a starter, just to see where people are and doing a check-in, see where their heads are at. Okay. All right. And so as we talk about some of the modalities, we've got the historical of online, blended, hybrid, augmented, and traditional. Those would be the predominant ones. I know that's not all of them, and maybe they have different terms at different places. By augmented, we mean the classes happen on ground, but maybe the instructor is doing a really good job of using the learning management system and blending in other resources, digital resources. Or traditional is going to be the all on ground, very minimal in the LMS. And then what we've seen happen now, moving to our now normal, we're going to see online more present, blended, and hybrid, whichever you prefer on those. And those have changed a little bit. Flipped has been around for a while, and that'll, I think, become more present, maybe flipping and blending together, of course. High flex, that's a term that I think Brian Beatty coined in about 2006. He's one of our close colleagues from the Cal State system. But that certainly became very big this past spring and on into present, where a lot of people are paying attention to high flex now. And then I've seen things like this recently as far as posts with delivery formats. This is from Twitter recently, where somebody posted their university's delivery formats that came up in March. And these are the formats that came up, about 11 of them. And this is how they were described. So as you can imagine, an instructor, a student looking at this is going to have a lot of questions. So again, this is one of the reasons why I've asked Kathy to join us today, is there's a lot of modalities that they're dealing with there at Chico, but I've seen even just in the last weeks how they've really fleshed that out and added support and interpretation to that. So you'll have a lot of examples coming up as we go forward. So I want to do one more. This is going to be where we'll pause for a few minutes. I want to do one more activity here, put this into the chat, or actually we've got that going already. Keep forgetting I've got support. The last hour I did a webinar, I had to fly solo. So let's look at this Padlet here. And what I want to do is have you pause for a moment, because these are a little bit different. On the very left-hand column, there's a poll type activity. How different will your institution's fall 2021 be compared to fall 2019? So you can click the thumb up for very, somewhat, no significant difference, or much more to do the poll. And then you see the three middle are the text response questions. What are the main differences as far as instructional design and delivery? So that's kind of for the faculty and learning designer folks. What important differences will be experienced in terms of course access and experience? So that's from the student perspective. And then what will be the main difference in terms of infrastructure, support, and logistics? That's thinking more of management and staff. And I know we have a cross section of these roles here. And then the last is a polling question. And I'll let you read that one on your own, but we'll go through the columns here and see what we're getting. Yeah, so far on the poll, not too surprising. We're seeing that things are going to be, even though there's going to be maybe some semblance of normal, maybe some coming back to campus, or maybe a good portion, majority coming back to campus, things are going to be very to somewhat different. Increased comfort and using technology. Yeah, that's one of the things I read as recently as last night was, yeah, the great thing about all of this is it's kind of forced people to start learning how to use technology. And I think it was a learning designer who had made that comment. Needing to upgrade the use of the technology, teaching smarter, deeper learning. Love that. Yeah, there's not just the what, but the why and the how to these things. So you want to be very, very mindful of how you use those tools. What are the outcomes? What are the experiences you're wanting students to have? Where do you want them to get? And then choosing accordingly. Great, I'm seeing comments and then people doing the vote up, that's great. Yeah, so faculty being expected to teach in the classroom while also broadcasting / facilitating class for students who choose to log in virtually. And how do you connect all of that together? Yeah, very complex. Student choice. Yeah, and students may choose for the whole semester what format they're going to do, or they may sign up for different on-site or online experiences alternately. Okay, more HyFlex happening. We got a lot here. Too many projects, rapid evolution, a lot of struggle with that. Yeah, things obviously moved way too quickly to do things effectively last spring. How are we managing things going forward? More tech support needed. Yeah, I would say more technical support, more learning design support for sure, more support across the board. And now just last, looking at collectively, what is your outlook for fall 2021? Okay, with all of that said, we at least have people still being optimistic. I like that. We just have to make the most of, and we have to look at the opportunity side of the coin, if you will. So I love seeing that. Very little on the downside. That's great. And that may also be a self-selection bias. You're here today. You're here for this session to engage and to learn and share. So there's a little bit of selection bias, I'm sure. All right. Thank you. Let me jump back, and you'll have access to any of these things if they're useful. We'll share out with you at the end. Okay. So let's think about what you're doing differently with your approaches to teaching and learning. What are you doing differently with faculty and staff development, tools and resources, student support, or even other? So what I want to do to go into some of that, and I'll have Kathy do a section for a while giving the Chico State story, but she's not just knowing Chico, she can talk beyond that as well. But we'll get into a discussion after that across your experiences. So the reason I selected Kathy today is, well, I've worked with Kathy closely. I think going back to about 2004, maybe sooner. I was faculty development director at Sonoma State in Northern California. Kathy was director of academic technology at Chico State. So from our campus roles, we worked together very closely. I had a great connection, complementary roles, and really clicked. Did presentations and projects kind of remotely together, and then became part of the same team for our chancellor's office for several years. I had a great run of it as far as doing these large scale course redesign programs, UDL, quality assurance for online, all those different types of things. But Kathy, in her role as academic technology officer, and what I've seen happen over the last year, her efforts and her campus's efforts have really stood out as being a very proactive model in trying to make the most of the situation and trying to go forward and be as supportive as possible, going back to last March, having their go virtual effort that she'll talk about, what they did with a large number of faculty and these intensive boot camps to try and get everybody ready for fall 2020, where some people sort of sat back and said, well, we'll wait this out, we'll wait and see, and things will just happen. So I'll have Kathy talk a little bit more about her model, and just really admire what Kathy has done with this situation. And, again, her role long-term and all the work that she's done in this area. So Kathy, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll keep tracking the slides for you.
Great, thanks, Brett. And it's always a joy working with you. So glad to be able to circle back here in the slivers of time that we've had together to prepare for today. So for those of you who don't know California State University, Chico, or Chico State, we're in Northern California, about an hour and a half north of Sacramento. And the Chico State's region, that is the region that we serve for the CSU, is almost the, north of Sacramento, almost the entire North State, from Oregon border to Chico and below, as well as from the mountains that are on the West Coast. Of course, Humboldt is northwest, but then looking over to Nevada, the reason why I say that is because we have 13 counties of the 100 and whatever counties in the state of California, which means Chico State has done on distance education for a long time. And some of that plays into what I'm going to talk about today. So we're usually between 15,000 FTE and 16,000 FTE based on riding the tides. So you get a sense of our size. The campus was originally a normal school starting in 1887. And I bring that up because that has a lot to do with our infrastructure. We are an older campus, which means as far as what we can get into and how we can extend space, especially when we're talking about social distancing and how many students we can fit into the classroom, we're very limited as far as number of students at one time. So Brett, if you want to go to the next slide. Pre-COVID, again, Chico State has degree completion programs that have been going on for a long time. We were an ITFS shop, and then into satellite, and then one of the very first using, I don't know if many of you know Horizon Live or WIMBA, if those are old academic technology organizations that have changed and been purchased and migrated over time. We were actually doing internet live streaming for quite a while before that was possible. Chico State was also the original campus back in the late 1990s, having a rubric for online instruction. We called it the ROI. And we had like 250 institutions across the United States that were using that rubric. And then as Brett and I worked together, Brett had taken what Chico State had done, as well as several other universities in higher education, and based on the latest trends, created what was called COLTS, the Quality Online and Learning Teaching Rubric. So Chico State has had a quality assurance focus for a long time. And I was at Chico State for 25 years. Then I did the the California State University Chancellor's Office for about 6.5 years. And now I'm back at Chico State. So you're going to hear me referring to those different chapters of my career. And when I came back to Chico State in 2019, essentially COLT for faculty to develop their onlineness was through a faculty learning community, which made it very limited because faculty didn't have a lot of time to be for a whole semester engaging through all the different presentations and projects and tasks that they needed to do. We have migrated the COLT program to be an online program. And again, that's partially due to COVID. So we have many faculty who've been teaching in broadcasting rooms with student assistants, of course, having in this day and age, multiple monitors where they can see themselves, they can see the Zoom room, and they can see their in-person students. So we have had a little taste of what we're moving into, and I'll describe that as we go forward. Of course, when March hit, many people picked up the keep teaching trend, and we immediately did a virtual one-day conference because faculty were given 2 days of non-teaching time to prepare to move their stuff to remote teaching. And so we did that virtual conference. Really, one of the things that Brett and I did really well, I feel, at the Chancellor's Office is we constantly crowdsourced faculty talking to each other, creating a strong community, trusting one another, engaging with one another in innovation, and adopting and adapting that innovation as they spoke with each other. So when I came back to Chico State in March, I was very quickly able to find faculty on campus who could offer a session on how they were leveraging technology and what they planned to do based on COVID. And that one day of faculty sharing tips, tricks, and tools was a good way to start priming the pump on bringing a learning community together of faculty as we moved forward. Okay, so next slide. Come the summer of 2020, so we're full blown into COVID, and of course, faculty knowing that they needed to, we were not going to be on campus, and regardless of their capabilities, we're going to need to teach, as we kept calling it, remote or distance, not wanting to confuse it with fully online learning or programs. So with the CARES,
Kathy, one second to interject, and you know, the CSU did something very different than most other institutions. Is they decided early on that they were not going back on campus for fall 2020, which other campuses through summer were planning on it into fall 2020, even as it started, and then did the toggling back and forth. So I just wanted to point that out. The CSU decided back, I think in April or May, I think.
Yeah.
In May, yeah, that fall will not happen in person. And so you were able to at least plan for that. So, sorry, go ahead.
That's a good catch. You're right on, because the decision was made early. It allowed us to prepare and to, you know, forewarn faculty and say, we know that for many of you, this is going to be a substantial change. So we weren't dallying around on what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And using the CARES funding, then 2 different things happened. The first being that, again, the campus leadership was really thinking originally with the CARES funding, we need ceiling cameras and microphones really for faculty to broadcast from the classrooms. That was the original thought. And of course, we have faculty who didn't have great broadband access, depending on where they lived here. Again, we are in the North State. There's lots of rural areas around us. And therefore, you know, good internet access for faculty to teach was a considerable issue. But then they went ahead and they also ordered enough of those ceiling cameras and mics for 107 classrooms. Plus, we had a new building coming on board. That's going really quickly into the classrooms with a lot of technology, and I'll talk a little more about that. So while that was happening on the, you might say, procurement and classroom technology hardware side of the house, then we launched in partnership with faculty development, the Go Virtual Summer Institute, and we trained over 330 faculty. It lasted 3 weeks, but it wasn't every day in 3 weeks. It was every other day. And once again, we did crowdsourcing of faculty. We had faculty mentors that we hired through the summer to lead anywhere between 15 and 20 faculty. And while we would meet in Zoom in the mornings, and it's sort of fun to talk about, we would have music and we would have themes, and we tried to make it fun. A lot of faculty weren't used to being on Zoom. They're not like we're all, ages 5 to 95 now know Zoom, but going back to summer 2020, people being uncomfortable with all the tools and features and buttons and knobs. And so we tried to make it very a soft intro. And in the mornings, would actually have back-to-back, sessions, again, bringing in experts in particular areas, focusing also around much of the COLT rubric, and then having in the afternoons, literally TLP sessions, which were instructional design technology workshops, as well as the faculty meeting in their cohorts, a lot of it discipline-based, so that they could say, well, this morning, we talked about student engagement. Now let's talk about student engagement based on the cohort of 20 faculty, and having them talk to each other based on their disciplines about their issues, their concerns. And then the faculty mentors would meet with my planning team. And again, we would make lots of adjustments for the Wednesday, if that was a Monday, for the Wednesday, what we were going to cover based on the concerns and the issues and things that were brought up. So a lot of coordination and a lot going on at that time. We moved our instructional designers to be fully online in a lab, and faculty, that's one thing we're not going back. Why would faculty want to leave their home or leave their office to walk over to the library, go up to the 4th floor, take out their laptop, or log into our lab, into their credentials in order to have somebody help them? Faculty, of course, have said, I hope you're not getting rid of the Zoom room support lab, because at any time, no matter where they are, what they're working on, they can dive into the Zoom room, get questions answered, and then walk back out or log out and continue to move forward. We did create, as part of the deliverables of the faculty completing the Go Virtual, we asked them to create videos, and in order for them to get paid, we had 330 of those approximately. However, the link that you'll get when the slides get passed around, we do have a showcase of those videos and a catalog that says, what discipline. And the faculty then share what they designed, how they changed their modules, what they learned from Go Virtual, what they learned from each other, and what they were going to implement for fall 2020. Again, I can't say enough about getting faculty to crowdsource with each other. So creating these videos and then asking a few of them, can we put your video in the showcase where it's more available publicly, so other faculty who didn't attend Go Virtual, or faculty who are on sabbatical or maybe family medical leave, that they can come back and see and hear what other faculty are doing to teach in fall 2020. That's what we did. And in wrapping that up, I have to say that also sort of fell over into intercession, again, taking some of what we had done for faculty who missed out on the 2020 Summer Institute. Okay, then I'll have one more slide here, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, I hope. So now we're talking about HERF funds, again, stimulus money. And of course, HyFlex is out there. And Chico State's concern was that we can't really do HyFlex. We can't have 30 students in a lot of our classrooms based on the size of our classrooms. So it's not really HyFlex. If faculty and students were to Google that, they would learn that, oh, students could choose to show up in person, which of course many of them are craving, or decide to stay online in Zoom. So we decided to call it ChicoFlex, where we needed a little bit more control over how many students were actually going to show up. And once again, the CSU did make early decisions about the fall, saying we will be in person. However, again, different campuses around the 23 campuses in the CSU, different sizes, different cultures, some are metropolitan, some are rural. Therefore, what does that actually mean? And for Chico State, I can say it's different depending on each college. Some of them may get more in-face, person-to-person than others. So when students ask the question, do we really get to come back face-to-face? It's It depends on your major and it depends on the classes you're taking. With ChicoFlex, we created 2 new modes of instruction. One of the ChicoFlex models was there are 2 course sections that the faculty are teaching at the same time. They will be in classroom 101, and there will be 10 students permitted for the entire semester in one course section to show up face-to-face. The other 20, if it's an enrollment of 30, the other 20 students for the whole semester will remain in Zoom online, and the faculty member will be in the classroom with the 10 in-person students with the auto tracking camera and with the microphones so that students can hear and talk to each other. Not having students in the room be in Zoom, so we don't want feedback, but that the microphones and the speakers back and forth, they can hear each other. The other ChicoFlex option is rotating. If you have 30 students, you can have 10 students face-to-face on Mondays, and then they go online Wednesdays and Fridays, while you have another 10 students from that class that show up on Wednesdays. They're the Wednesday cohort, and then you can have the Friday cohort. Now, part of the complexity of all of this is getting faculty to understand the different ways that they needed to code how they were going to teach their course, consulting with department chairs, and then making sure that students understand what all these different modes of instruction mean. And I still think we need more cleanup in our modes of instruction, but it takes a lot of coordination between student affairs and academic affairs about what do all these things mean. So we did create what Brett's showing you here is the student guide to, do I have to be on campus? Some students may have chosen not to get a lease in Chico, which may be very difficult to get once they look at the registration of their courses and say, do I need to be in Chico or can I stay here at home? And then what courses are offered in what modes, and hence, is it just a matter of I need to be online at a certain time, but I can still have a job and work around those times, or am I going to take fully online asynchronous courses? So we tried to break that out, as well as we created videos specifically for faculty. The person who did the videos is the faculty development director. So she spoke explicitly from the coding side, in other words, from the institutional side of the house. What are all these different modes, the shortcut names that we give them, and what do they actually imply, so that faculty were more clear and students had better expectations of how these different modes were going to work together. So again, it still continues to be a challenge to communicate with, 16,000 students, 1,000 faculty, and trying to get the understanding of these different modes. Again, it's as you see at the top, rapid evolution. It's not ready, set, go. It's go, get ready, now you're set. For spring 2021, right now, we have 5 faculty piloting these new ChicoFlex, HyFlex classrooms, and chose them specifically based on experience that they've had teaching and comfortability with technology, as well as across the different disciplines. And it's a very collaborative team at Chico. The technology and learning program, the faculty development, and the classroom technology services, working with these 5 faculty to have them teaching from these classrooms. We pretend to be the in-person students, because right now campus is closed to students, but we act as the in-person students to give the faculty the experience, and then to be taking notes about adjustments we need to make with the auto tracking of the camera, the controller, the presetting of the controller, what we label things in the controller, so faculty without the jargon know what things mean that way, talking about how they want to poll and the different technologies they may want to use to engage students both online and in person at the same time. And while we're gathering all that information, we're preparing for not a Go Virtual, but a Go Flex Summer Institute. And according to department chairs, there'll be about 125 to 200 faculty who will be trained in how to use these rooms. And we'll have lots of student assistant support, and got a couple extra staff for temporarily for a year to support the number of faculty who are going to dive in. And I do have to say, it still makes me a little nervous because we're going from small, short pilot into full production in the fall. That will definitely put us all up on the toes, and why I continue to talk about Brene Brown's FFTs. You definitely have to look up her podcast to understand the first F. But so many first times, and it's not about going back. It's about going forward. And so many people just think we're going back. And when you consider all the COVID protocols and all that it's taking to plan to go back with social distancing, et cetera, it's not a back, it's a forward. And we keep saying that to our students. So I'll stop there and hope that we can engage with questions and comments.
Yeah, we've got some things in chat we'll get through, Kathy, and then also please feel free, folks, at this moment, start putting questions toward Kathy or just out in general. Yeah, that we're not going back. I mean, that's the thing, I think, culturally in higher education, is we've hit things like recessions, budget times, people sort of hunker down and then they wait to go back to normal, sort of bloat back up again. And this is, I think, a scenario where there's no going back. There's no just hunkering down and waiting it out. We're going to something different. And I think, part of that is just progressing. Part of it is survival and relevance. So multiple factors that I think are really tipping things forward. A lot of struggle and challenge with that, but again, a lot of exciting things that hopefully we can take advantage of. So Kathy, one question I'll read from the chat. It was a few moments ago from Christine Pruitt. So are faculty required to participate in these trainings in order to teach in these new modalities and rooms? How did or do you get them to come to such trainings?
It's nice that the California State University Chancellor's Office literally has sent to all the campuses the ability to pay faculty stipends over the summer. So it is money motivated. Of course, with a lot of faculty who have now gotten a little more comfortable with technology than they ever would have before, I would say there's also more curiosity. Again, you started these modes of instruction. Now, wait, how is this going to work? And I think also some faculty are, based on their discipline, internally motivated based on, I'll just take engineering for an example. We sort of came up with one of those ChicoFlex models because engineering was basically saying we need time for students to be in our engineering labs. So how can we mix and put it in the class schedule that students will understand that they're going to be on campus, let's say once a week for our particular class, with other things to do online. So as we continued to talk with faculty, many of them, of course, are very passionate about getting students back to the tactical hands-on, obviously in STEM and labs and that kind of thing. And that has also helped, again, shape a conversation and priming the pump based on faculty's interest in creating ways to make this work.
Great. I'm seeing positive comments about what you've described with your program as well, the high level of thoughtfulness and organization. And yeah, what I would point out to folks is that, faculty were heavily involved in the delivery and shaping of the program. I watched the agenda. I looked at the sessions last year and yeah, saw some great faculty oriented demonstrations and presentations. It wasn't technology and learning telling you do this, or demonstrations that are click here, now click here. No, go back, click here. It was really practical, instructor oriented.
Yeah, I can't say enough about those faculty cohorts. And again, Brett and I did a lot of that at the Chancellor's Office, and faculty engaging with each other, just creating time and space. I think we sometimes forget that, meaning that if we create time and space with a purpose, of course, faculty can work together to achieve all kinds of things. And again, what are your fears? What are your issues? How do you see these particular things? And sometimes, them talking to each other brings up things that they won't necessarily bring up, live in a Zoom room or to administration. So it's really helpful to have the faculty mentors who helped create that program, as you said, Brett, and us reaching out to other faculty to talk about their experiences, and then just highlighting those faculty as faculty talking to each other. The more you can highlight that and gain that kind of trust with each other, then the more synergy that builds.
Great. And one of the reasons I asked Kathy to go ahead and talk about, the last year, even though in some ways we feel like we want to be done with that experience and move forward, is that Go Virtual Institute that you see there is a really great model. And if you weren't able to get it together last year to do something like that, but are looking at doing something this year, then there's a wealth of resources there to look at and consider and adapt from. And so kudos to the Chico team for making that openly available as well. One question I have, Kathy, and we'll keep looking at the chat, is I happened to be in a conversation yesterday, and Carrie O'Donnell, who's here, was as well, with a colleague we have in common, CSU colleague, and she was describing where the enrollments at some campuses are, enrollment for fall is opening up at different stages for different campuses. But even though on ground is being offered and students say they want the campus experience on ground and all that, many of them are actually choosing to instead sign up for online. And it may be for financial reasons. They're thinking, well, I don't have to do the lease. I can do it from home, not pay for the lease, not pay a meal plan or whatever. So they're opting for the convenience though. Are you seeing any numbers yet through admissions or through student services?
So, I don't have specifics about particularly enrollment, and registration for us for fall starts next Monday. So I'll have more information as, of course, registration happens. Faculty, even as they got to know ChicoFlex, a lot of changes were being made between March and, again, registration, so that as we communicated the different kinds of modes, making sure that faculty and students were on the same page. I know at Chico State, as far as complaints and parents calling, et cetera, the understanding of what the different modes meant and how that worked during COVID, different faculty, different courses, different things. And I have to say that sometimes I think for students, if I say it's online, at least I know what it is. If I say it's part in line and part face-to-face, I don't know what that means, because there's so many different possibilities and ways that faculty have actually implemented that. So I think the still fuzziness and non-experience yet of what this HyFlex hybrid options are is still not clear enough to say, I know what I want, this is what I want. And I think that causes some of the hesitation. I also have to say, I think that students want student life, meaning, they want to gain new friends, they want to have experiences, and that's what they want campus for. When it comes to classes, I do think, as you're sort of innuendoing, that we're going to be a lot more hybrid in the future, because it's going to be, people are going to see the inclusivity about it. Students, based on HyFlex choices, can then be more flexible in their schedule. So that's how I see it.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts from folks? I'm looking at a couple of questions. I'll look at Christine's first. Kathy, so if you see that as well. Creating time and space to do this is very difficult unless administration sees value, yes. Those of us in teaching and learning centers can try all we want, but it won't gain much traction. Any suggestions for how to promote or advocate for this?
Yeah. I have to say my fear is in the future, once the stimulus funds are over, I'm ignored again. Meaning that it goes back to what you're describing, Christine there. I think the key thing being is, again, trying to start from the perspective of the students about, well, if, for instance, Chico had done several fall surveys about what the students thought in current times. And students actually in the survey said we're having a difficult time communicating with each other. In other words, it's one thing to be in the classroom and turn to the person next to you and say, do you understand what's going on? Are you getting this? There's no way for the peers to connect. It's all at you. And so trying to convince upper leadership about the student experience, and the only way to change the students' daily, weekly experience of classes is to change the way faculty are working. And again, I know this is not typical. Faculty don't typically work together on teaching their courses, right? I mean, you hire a lecturer, you say, here's the course, here's the learning outcomes, go. So really trying to create the synergy amongst the faculty is important, especially as we move to more online, meaning there's more that they can share. So in the Go Virtual, we did try to get faculty sharing more publicly what they were doing in their courses, because online is more tangible, meaning you go into the LMS, and in this case, we're Blackboard, and faculty have something more tangible rather than, oh, in order to see how you teach, I'd have to show up in your room, and that's really uncomfortable. So we're really trying to leverage the digital side of templates and faculty sharing with each other what they do in their courses, because again, it's digital, it is tangible, rather than walk into my classroom and watch how I do this. So I'm hoping with faculty talking to each other, and with, if leadership will focus on the student experience and what's not going on, and how to work with some faculty to talk to each other, particularly in the areas that are working, is trying to synergize all that. I realize it's still a challenge if leadership are not comfortable with the digital age. We're talking about the old saying of digital immigrants versus digital natives. It's very difficult for them. It's a black hole. You don't know what you don't know. And that is a challenge. I definitely agree.
Great, thank you. Yeah, for interest of time, and thank you so much again, Kathy, and I encourage folks to peruse what's available there. We just wanted to kind of talk about, okay, how, as you're thinking about your modalities that you're working with, that range of, you might have 5, you might have 11, somewhere within that range of modalities, how are you managing that? And then, what we're always focusing on is how are you making, not just managing it, but making it more purposeful as far as the learning that happens across those modalities. And Kathy mentioned the CSU Quality Learning and Teaching Instrument, and we developed that. Something that I've done in my work with O'Donnell Learn the last year is to take that and actually expand it further in certain areas. And we've really worked on adding more to making it even more learner-centric, even more on humanizing, even more on equity and inclusion. And so that's sort of the connection with what Kathy mentioned and sort of what we're doing. And we've worked with many institutions over the last year on how they've adapted through the pandemic and through the changing reality, and doing boot camps. We have a boot camp called Jumpstart, where we've worked with campuses to do these anywhere from 4-week to 6-week, ideally, training experiences, where you have these synchronous experiences that are very much about learning by doing and working together as a cohort, but then you have asynchronous experiences that they go through, and how they're iterating their courses, how we're setting them up to do that, but then also some learning design support. So that's the model that we've been using through O'Donnell Learn, and this is our 8 elements of effective learning, our purposeful learning framework. For those of you that are familiar with the Colt instrument Kathy mentioned, or something like Quality Matters, we map to all of those elements, but again, we kind of go further for sure on the right-hand side, where you're looking at the sort of student-centric elements, but doing the left side where it's more of the teaching and learning mechanics, if you will, structure of doing that. So I'm curious to hear from others and I see a question about the slides. Absolutely, we'll send you the slides and the recording. I'm curious to see how others have approached doing these types of efforts. While I wait for that, let me take a pause for a moment. I'm also being aware of time, that I know we are coming down to the last stretch here. Yeah, definitely the engagement elements. There's so many tools available. It's a matter of selecting the right ones.
Which is a challenge in and of itself. Again, if you're not supported and you're a faculty member looking for which engagement tool do I need, that it becomes then your challenge to figure it out. Where if you have some support, and we have, I'm the academic technology officer, and we have 4 instructional designers, and hiring a couple more who, of course, know these technologies, and start with the faculty. Well, what are you trying to accomplish? And then let's talk about the tool, instead of I'm fishing for a tool, but I'm not sure about the tool or how to best engage with it.
Yeah, good point. And one of the things we do is with the purposeful learning framework, we now have this purposeful learning check, which is something we can point faculty to where they actually spend time looking at a course, just focusing on one course, And then looking at this purposeful learning check, where it takes those 8 elements you saw a moment ago and 30 collective objectives and has them go through and reflect on their course and how well they may or may not be meeting those objectives. Where are their strengths? Where are their opportunities to maybe get stronger? And then they take some notes along the way. So this purposeful learning check that we have here, you can see just a screenshot example of, let's say, section 1 on welcome and introduction. We find that many instructors have always kind of taken that section for granted. I launch a course, here we are, let's go. But there's a really effective way to do that in making it humanizing and having a welcome video, the tone of your syllabus. I'm reading some great research just in the last week on the tone of your syllabus will make it significantly more likely that students will ask for help. And if you think about students who are sort of first gen on the margins for different reasons, if they don't feel like they're welcomed, they belong, and that they can ask for help, then they're going to tend to fade to the background and maybe fade out completely. So we have some ideas and examples we use for each of these objectives, where it's either a tool or a technique or both that we would use. So we have instructors go through this self-check and actually look at where they would rate themselves on this slider scale. In the live version, we use a slider scale for these endpoints. And this is an example where they may put themselves on the slider scale, let's say, and then they make a note for that section on something they may have felt strong about or something that they're thinking, okay, I'm going to go ahead and need to strengthen that area. So these are my thoughts. And they'll capture that. And then when they get to the end of that purposeful learning check, they'll then bring down some of those ideas after the 8 sections into this course enhancement plan. And they'll just make notes on these 3 areas. They're simply reflections at this stage. And they'll take those reflections and now they can use those to engage, let's say, with a learning designer. The learning designer will help them take those 3 reflection statements and put them more into outcome statements and say, okay, great. Here's an outcome you would like to make your course stronger in this area. Let's look at a tool or technique to be able to do that, and they'll be able to work together. So this is how we've been able to work with campuses and individuals, either by doing boot camp experiences and or doing learning designer consultations to be able to help faculty make these purposeful enhancements to their courses going forward, regardless of modality. This is something that is anywhere from fully online to fully on ground could be. But of course, people aren't necessarily focused on fully on ground now. So this is the sample course enhancement plan, how it becomes more formalized and what the resources would look like. We would say, okay, great, you want more of a community sense? Then at the outset of your course, you can implement this learner connectedness survey. There's one example. What does your course homepage look like? How does that greet students? Do you have a welcome video? So those would be 3 steps. I'm just going to pause and look at chat here. Any other questions or comments? We can also make this resource available, the Purposeful Learning Check. We have that as an online survey form, so we'll go ahead and follow up with that and make that available as well. And it's something that you or your faculty can use. I'm looking at Terry's comment regarding faculty motivation. Oh, we have multiple comments here. Okay, good. So it's a positive comment. Thanks, Terry. Good. I'm good to hear glad to hear when people have good experiences like that. Yeah, managing with microphones with students in the classroom. Yeah, that's interesting. So I know, Kathy, as far as infrastructure and technology, how you're tackling that question from Kara.
Well, we have basically said that students in the classroom don't per se need to be in Zoom, but if they are, do not click the join audio. You know how when you falsely, when you don't connect to audio, you end up with the little icon in the bottom left in Zoom that has the headset kind of thing, like, okay, how do you want to join? We don't want students in the classroom touching the microphones on their computers or their phones if they choose to join in Zoom. What we do is say to the students in the, pretending to be students in the classroom right now, we are saying to the faculty, project your Zoom room onto the projector front screen. And then when you're going to share your PowerPoint or your YouTube video or whatever course materials you have, do share screen in Zoom. So of course, all the people in Zoom are seeing what you're share screening. And then because you're projecting your Zoom room in the room, the students in the room are seeing everything that the students online are seeing. So that's how we set that up. And again, trying to keep everybody out of the miking situation on their own device.
I'm seeing a comment about mobile devices, Google Sheets, Jamboards, typical online. Absolutely, something like a Jamboard and being able to input and move things around, that's going to be difficult for sure, if not impossible. Yeah, some tools will adapt across all situations, some won't. So it's finding that
I don't
sweet
know if
spot.
people know this, but and again, it still may not be helpful depending on what you're trying to do. But Google does have apps that are specific to, oh, I'm having them work on a Google Sheet. If they download the Google Sheet app, your phone will work much better than trying to run it off a web browser on your phone. Again, may not be ideal, but definitely improved over the web interface.
Great. And Carla, balancing the offer of structure and best practices with the faculty teaching experience, do faculty resist?
Gosh, there's a lot to that question in the sense of it's not an easy answer in trying to regain faculty trust. And of course, if you just have, let's say, a group of them that are the resistors, you're not going to gain trust within that group of resistors. What we do try to do is, again, if we can encourage more faculty who are available, open, and willing to keep showing what they're doing, then we just keep highlighting them. I had a couple people in Go Virtual basically saying, this isn't helpful. But I kept bringing back, we did a daily survey, and I kept bringing back the actual Google form pie chart that said, okay, most of you are very comfortable, and here's some comments that we got and some changes we made. We heard what you had to say. And some faculty said, for, again, on this daily basis, bringing the feedback, it was like, wow, you're really looking at what we're saying and you're adjusting. And we didn't adjust everything, of course, because you can't, but we adjusted a few things and then spoke to the things that we adjusted to. So we're listening to you, which was really all a matter of trying to keep developing more trust, that we were open, we were listening, and we still were going to highlight the great work that we felt like other faculty were doing. So I hope that's a sort of more of a philosophical, strategic kind of, how do you get the resistors? Well, you run with the ones that are building the trust and are feeling good and are feeling value and are feeling heard, and then run with them.
Great, thanks, Kathy. And I see we are at the top of the hour, so let me get to the last slide and some of the takeaway resources that we do have through today. And many of those are embedded across the slides. So the main thing is you will receive the slide link from us and the recording